So we compete against each other to see which one am I going to be able to tame.
Men will tell you, we don't even have to hate women. Women will do that for us.
Oh, okay.
The way that we've constructed men, masculinity alike, impacted the way that they seek out help and the way that they receive help.
In 2026, the new polygamist is a woman.
How do we bring all genders to account rather than one gender must, hold the fort and the other is allowed to be inconsistent?
Yeah, that's very toxic and dysfunctional. Hi guys, welcome back to Mind Vault podcast, where we unlock minds one story at a time. We are continuing our men's mental health talk, Men Unlocked, and today we are having a counseling psychologist, Buyisile Mncina, and she's going to be taking us through the psychology of men and what women can do to support their partners. Thank you so much for joining in. Buyisile, thank you so much for coming through. Hey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Clementine, for inviting me to Mind Vault. This is good work, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
I'm so honored. We had a nice chat, behind the scene about how we can sort of like tackle this conversation, because I had my thoughts and I thought yours was more brilliant. And so we're going to take your part. But just to introduce yourself, who are you and why do you do what you're doing?
For sure. So I'm a counselling psychologist in practice, registered with the HPCSA. And in terms of just the work I do, it's individual counselling, couples counselling, family interventions, psychosocial and psychoeducative work. So your media, podcasts, radio, print media, and basically really just the teacher at heart. I also have lecturing experience, supervision. Critical thinking, really just around psychology and all things psychology.
Yeah, I love the critical thinking part, right? Because we have to think outside of the box. Sometimes there is a narrative that is given to us and we need to sort of like swallow it, but you're also a critical thinker and you question things, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So I just found your profile very fascinating. I didn't listen to so much of your work, but I just looked at you and I'm like, I like her energy. And, having the conversation with you was just mind-boggling. And I think that our viewers can learn a lot from what you have. And so you are dealing with individuals, but you also deal with couples, which makes this conversation better. Yes. Right. So for me as a clinician, what I'm worried about is that I tend to see the females more than males, for whatever reasons that we can maybe allude to later on. And yet most of the women that are coming to see us have men issues.
Absolutely. We have a long way to go with health-seeking behavior. It is still quite gendered towards women taking up the care.
Yeah.
So we also see the same trend lines really even in therapy itself.
Yeah. And why do you think that men are not seeking help, even though their female counterparts and sometimes even their male counterparts who are in homosexual relationships struggle? Why are men not attuned to seeking help when they actually do need it as much as women do?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the departing point is really around the way that we've constructed men, masculinity alike. And it has been around the context of leadership. And when you are a leader, you are said to be well known or knowing quite a little bit more than what is typical. So what we see is, because we've kind of fixated masculinity within leadership capacity, both home, work, industry, whatever the case may be, we find that there is less and less of an admission to not knowing, or less of an admission to needing help, less of an admission to vulnerability. So because we've kind of put them on this social pedestal, we've also really impacted the way that they seek out help and the way that they receive help. Just the same,
Okay, all right. So let's start. I mean, like you're saying that it's how men were raised, to believe that they know better, and actually they don't know as much, because when they actually open up in therapy, you can see that yes, they might be successful in one area of their life, but there's an area that is completely dysfunctional and they sort of try and hide. But I think maybe we can take our audience through the journey of how a boy becomes a man from a psychological point of view, and you can share whatever knowledge you have about how you feel or how you have been taught a boy becomes a man, especially in a Black context as well.
Of course. So we all go through psychosocial stages. And in terms of journeying with boys becoming men, one of the earlier experiences that boys are exposed to is the idea of protection and provision. That is really the context of their socialization. Make sure that you protect your mom if there's the absence of a father, or even if the father is present, the appreciation is we take care of the women in our family. So the first context that they introduce to is this idea of protection. So psychological protection, physical protection, etc. And then they go into understanding provision. So they see the male figures in their lives going out, seeking out work, protecting and providing for the home, creating a sense of security. And that's what they're exposed to in terms of now desiring this emulation, to say, this is the frame of masculinity. How do I then emulate that? And what they then see in the context of emotionality is there is so much more regard for the women that they are raised to protect, to be the ones who have that ability to be emotional and actually allowance to be emotional. So what then we say to our boys is, you need to be tough, you need to be strong, you're the man of the house. And you're saying this to a 3-year-old, you're the man of the house. And you know, it's that conditioning. So they learn to suppress their emotions and they learn to kind of equip their logical mind. So always be a problem solver, always see the gaps where problems arise, you know, always brave face, be composed. So that is how we're raising our boys. We go into the next kind of society, which is their school and their peer relationships, and that is reinforced even further. You know, you're being taught to kind of let the girls in first, you know, how to conduct yourself and the likes. And in terms of emotionality, it's something that's really suppressed. So we find that suppression then does carry on to young adulthood and even when they become grown men, even into them being elderly. Very tough even to get men to kind of be vulnerable the older they become.
And do you think that they are trained eventually to become partners, compatible partners to, I would say, females by default, you know? And I'm not trying to exclude other identities, but do you find that they are trained to protect their mothers and sisters and not necessarily to be emotionally connected to their partners?
That kind of training is self-propelled, or it's a personal endeavor one would take, in terms of what my observation in the work. In terms of spaces that really start to drum in the idea of emotional sensitivity, emotional connectivity, not so much. You know, I suppose even in the way that men gather typically, it's really about helping each other problem solve. Very little around that kind of emotional diversity as a person, and also kind of learning language, learning articulation when it comes to emotional well-being. So what we do find is the effort made is a personal effort by men to say, I'm going to be emotionally in touch, self-aware. I'm going to learn from my romantic partner how to be in touch with myself. I'm going to allow her in, you know, and I won't kind of handle the relationship with my defenses being so high.
Okay. And let's talk about the female. I mean, the little girl that will later on meet this man who has been raised to suppress emotions, to protect and to provide. And for that man to later on learn that actually in South Africa in 2026, the person who is more able to provide financially is a woman, because women are empowered to get better positions at work. They're empowered to get sponsorship to go to school compared to men. So can we speak about the girl and how she's raised to become this woman that will later on meet the men?
Well, the girl is complex. The girl is very complex. One of the things that I tend to hear quite often amongst women coming into the space, in our own groups, amongst
Yeah.
ourselves as well. It's just the age in which we start to hear about this context of marriage.
Yeah.
You know, from when you are 7 years old and you are sleeping way into the sunrise, that's when the conversation
Yes.
around who will marry you, what kind of man will, you know, and those become the first parts. You know, playing house, and you must take on the role of a mother or a maternal figure or a nurturing figure. So there's a lot of a preparation around how to prime yourself for a suitable partner,
Yeah.
how to ensure that you position yourself in a particular way to be chosen. And that's why, you know, the language of social media will categorize women who kind of follow that kind of social script as pick-me's,
Sure.
because it is this idea of there is a particular blueprint of if you are to be desirable to another, this is how you must conduct yourself. And that
Yeah.
is really something that we are socialized into and reinforce in our conversations with other women.
So a girl is by default raised to be somebody else's wife.
Absolutely.
And what does that do psychologically later on when relationship starts becoming complex and difficult and challenging, or even when some women, especially in the 21st century, where getting married is very optional and it's something that most women would rather not do. So what does that do to us when we grow older?
The empowerment agenda has been quite a meaningful one towards, you know, women and girl empowerment, because it has started to almost level the milestones, to say that, you know, there's a particular sequence, which is this blueprint, and there's a crown milestone in this sequence, and then there's a combination in terms of you can be either or. It doesn't have to, you know, you can be both, rather than choosing to be either or. And I think that empowerment now is starting to have women be a lot more open to just how dynamic relationships should be. Like you said, women do also provide. They do also, you know, go into the workplace as well. You've got dual income homes as a result of that. So we're seeing this kind of hierarchy being leveled. And I think in that leveling of that hierarchy, there's a tension point, power dynamic. That's when that starts to kind of be enforced, where it is almost a thing of what leverage will the man still hold over a woman. So even as we're flattening this hierarchy, there's also this thing of, okay, so where will I still be influential as a man? And if I'm not influential intellectually, I must be influential economically. And if I'm not, you know, kind of tapping into those things, then I have to resort to fear and power to be able to subdue or to be able to garner that kind of respect that I need. So that's the tension point in flattening this gender hierarchy.
And what are we seeing in clinical practice? Do we see men who are trying to be resourceful in other way and try to reinvent themselves whenever they meet challenges? Or do we have a lot of men by default just resorting to power and control? You know, I mean, we've been chatting about the new Netflix Jonas, you know. Do we have a lot of men becoming Jonases because of how fast the world is evolving, and they were not prepared for this, you know, and the world is evolving and it's not in their favor, actually. So what are we seeing in clinical practice?
In clinical practice, I would say I'm seeing a intentional rejection of hypermasculinity. So the hegemonic agenda of who a man should be, you know, hashtag indoda must. There is this, you know, really conscious rejection of that. And we're seeing a pursuit of what does masculinity mean for myself, rather than what the general patriarchal script is. So when it comes to what we see in the practice is more and more men admitting to their partners that I've been tasked as the head of this home. Half the time I really truly don't know what I'm doing. And that honesty starts to really become this breakthrough and a transient experience in the space, because now we're able to tap into beyond the gender norms, beyond the gender roles and responsibilities. There's human to human, and where do we meet each other at human to human?
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask, you know, is it men who are rejecting this toxic masculinity, or is it women who are rejecting it? And
Men are rejecting it.
Okay.
Women are the custodians of patriarchy, like we
Yeah.
were speaking about it
Yes,
earlier,
yeah.
to say it is actually women who would like to maintain masculinity ideals, and simply because it allows us to then grade each other as
Okay.
women, to say, okay, if you have a Jonas in your life, where did you go wrong? What didn't you see? There were red flags. Why did you pick this man? And then there's this honorable man, and there must be some kind of thing that you've done to be rewarded with an honorable man. So
Yeah.
we really are custodians of patriarchy, and we are the ones who are driving a lot of some of these masculinity ideals that are very suppressing to women and even other masculinities, if you
Yeah.
think about
Yeah.
it in the hegemonic frame. Yeah.
And I've heard that women are the custodians. But can you elaborate more on what you mean by the fact that women are custodian of patriarchy?
Yeah. When you go on social media, there's all of these themes around dynamics between men and women, right? And even for the Netflix series that you referenced, there's a lot of focus on the type of woman that Jonas was attracted to, and what was potentially happening in their lives than the man himself. So when we think about the women being the custodians of patriarchy, is that there's so many more ways in which we will give men passes for a number of things, and we will place the responsibility on women to either have needed to be docile, to have needed to be timid, to have needed to be permissive, so that they could find favor in the eyes of the men that they're with. So a lot of the times that is the thing that we see. And even when we were looking at these topics on social media, men will tell you, we don't even have to hate women. Women will do that for us, because there's this tension that happens around the masculinity. Yeah.
So we compete against each other to see which one am I gonna be able to tame.
Yeah.
All right. And so okay. All right. That's very toxic and dysfunctional. And yet it's the same women who would now stand up and because now in clinical practice, I know that we're going to be having a lot of women our way. Ever since this thing came out, I haven't watched it or read it. But I have a lot of women coming in and saying they're being triggered. And some of them, they say, I identify myself in those women, and like you're saying, no one is really analyzing the men. And someone was saying that instead of saying, why do you do this? Maybe we should say, what happened to you for you to become this way? So what does psychology say about a man who become that toxic and that dysfunctional? What happens by default to men to end up being that terrible?
Yeah, there's a social currency in which we all exist in, and for men, there's a particular way that they want to be seen amongst other men.
Okay.
So when it comes to unpacking what happens in the psychology, there's a way in which you need to create almost like an alternative ego to be able to move in the space as a man with so much influence, status, power. And that's what, a lot of that gravitational pull is towards.
Yeah.
And when it comes to understanding the psychology, is that there's a lot that is masked, beneath, this kind of aura and pull that you have. And I suppose in intimate relationships, that's when that unmasking occurs. To say that there's this public and private discourse that we always talk about in relationship settings, to say the men the men in public is different from the men in private.
Definitely.
And that's when you start to see a lot of the psychology unfold there, where sometimes women realize, oh, okay, I prefer him in the public arena because there's a certain way in which he conducts himself, and there's a certain currency in which he pursues. And in private, he's a different person. And maybe in private, that is truly the true self rather than the ideal self out there. Yeah.
And I see that as well in clinical practice, where even people who are married to pastors, all right, who have a certain public aura and energy, and they're lovable, and they are terrible husbands, and even abusive husbands at home. Or we have seen in the news powerful businessmen being terrible partners at home, and even terrible fathers at home. And the thing is, the reason why I thought we should have this conversation is that I am concerned about the females that seem to sort of like want to put their lives on hold to help change this private person to match the person that everybody knows them to be. And like I'm saying, it's at the expense of their mental health. So can we explore on the dynamics behind that, the psychology behind that? And honestly, I just want women to be able to look after themselves, even when they are still supporting somebody who is navigating difficulties in their lives.
Yeah. One of the divine gifts that women have been entrusted with is foresight.
Okay.
And, you know, when you think about the wisdom in terms of creation and how God created the woman to become a suitable helper, I assume it was because she could see beyond what Adam was able to perceive.
Okay.
So we as women are very future focused. We see potential in people. We believe in people. We nurture what has not been realized.
Okay.
Right? So the problem is, although we have this ability, which is great, we must understand that even though I have gone into the future and I've placed you somewhere in your potential, your partner must do the work to get there.
Yeah.
The challenge is we start to do the work to channel them towards this potential, as opposed to saying, this is how I see you and this is how I envision you as the man in my life.
Yeah.
And my hope and my prayer and my wish is for you to see yourself the way that I see you. And then the journey begins in terms of the support, the working through, but also to realize that sometimes the potential you see may not be something that they would like to tap into.
Yeah.
And that's where the frustration, I suppose, is, where we now want to channel and guide men into assuming this place that we had envisioned.
Yeah.
Yet it's a thing of, it's part of, we have to collaborate.
Yeah.
And in that collaboration, it's where do you see us going, and where do I see you leading us to, and where can we find common ground in terms of this and merge in a meaningful way. But for us, we do the work. We want to, you know, uphold the decorum of this relationship, and we want to showcase this potential that we exist in. But right now, this is all you get. He will get there eventually if it is indeed the path he must take, and if he also co-signs to that vision.
Yeah.
So we become paralyzed by the potential we see, and we will sacrifice all of what we have and who we are to ensure that potential is realized, leaving the man behind
To do whatever he wants.
to do whatever he wants. And for us, it's just like, I'm like 20 years ahead of you, creating and curating this life for us that you have not even realized for yourself.
Sure. And going back to women being custodian of patriarchy, and what you had just said now, I also feel like there are some cultural stuff that influences this, you know, because, you know, if a man is unfaithful and you go to your elders, they'll be like, yeah, but men are like that, you know. I have heard it also even in church setting, and sometimes in the church setting is that you must praise the devil, you know, messing up with your home, and you need to protect your home. And so if you need to go for a 40-day and 40-day and night fast so that you can protect your family, do that, you know. And yet there is less conversation around the men and what they are supposed to be doing. So can we just elaborate? I mean, can we explore the dynamics around that as well?
There's a need for correction to be done across the board if something has gone wrong, which is why couples therapy becomes such an effective tool, because you are both listening in on ways to improve, ways to mend, ways to repair a rupture in the same room at the same time. So a lot of what we perpetuate is this idea of a siloed approach to being able to assist women and men in resolving household issues. Yet there is a place for both of them to come together, and we lay the cards on the table. What are the expectations that have not been met? What are the expectations that are evolving and leading to frustration, if that's the case, or resentment? So the idea of women kind of being able to encourage a resilience, but not necessarily saying, you are both our children.
Yes.
Come in and let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
What is happening? Because the likelihood is on the other side as well. Maybe certain things are partially being spoken about, or maybe it's selective in terms of the counsel given. But if we're all sitting in front of an elderly person in the home that we regard, or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, we're both hearing the ways in which there are gaps in our partnership, and how do we mend those.
Sure. So yeah, very, very, very interesting and very deep. Listen to this and be able to say, okay, this is where I think I'm going wrong, and seek professional help. Something that we touched on, and this came about because one of my clients was saying that she feels like in 2026 the new polygamist is a woman, right? Because women are tired of being the good ones, of being the pure ones, of being the ones that are faithful and committed to a man who doesn't hold the same moral values, and are you finding that that's what's happening, and what do you think women are starting to match the man's energy, and in a negative and sometimes a toxic way as well?
So using that reference, the kind of distorted thinking is as a result of a fractured consciousness. And that's what you are referencing in terms of there is a fatigue around being the ones to uphold morality, being the ones to uphold monogamy and its ideals. And that's what we must interrogate, is this fracture. To say this fracture is historic, and what are the points of vulnerability in this fracture. With morality, it has always been placed, in the purity narrative, always been placed to be safeguarded by women. To the point where a deviation from that has very intense consequences, including gender-based violence as a result. And what becomes this, I guess, resistance that we're seeing in the space is wanting to topple the ideals of, it cannot be assigned for one gender, this morality, and not for the other. And maybe the plea, and the desperate plea we're seeing here, is how do we bring all genders to account for their integrity, to account for their personal agency, to account for all aspects and virtue of being in a relationship, rather than one gender must, hold the fort and the other is allowed to be inconsistent.
And those things start in young age.
Absolutely.
Right? And so now that we are the adults who have to deal with this man that has been raised in this cultural norms that we are now challenging, so are you saying that now we have to bear the consequences because we've missed the developmental stage, and maybe I can raise my son and daughters differently because I know better, but for me as an adult, I have to suffer the consequences of what my forefathers were unable to question and correct, because there are a lot of women will be like, well, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving a man who is down. I'm not leaving a partner who is addicted to substances. I'm not going to leave them when they are down. I'm going to allow them at least to be standing on their feet and be parallel. And then we're going to tackle the fight, And by the time that happens, the women have died inside, they are just living in the shell of who they were in the past, because they have left everything to look after a man who is not bordered by the status quo, so
Two parts. Firstly, no one is beyond redemption. So there's always a working through, regardless of age, where you find yourself in life. You can always make the choice to pivot and do life differently. Then the second thing is men and prescription. Um, Men would love for things to be suggested, not prescribed.
Okay.
That's where the tension is.
Yeah.
When we're saying you should do this, and you
Yes.
should do that,
They
they close out to those opinions
prescription.
because it's prescription. But if there's a suggestion towards men to say, go into a space where you get the opportunity just to unpack your life history.
Yeah.
We're not saying there's something wrong with you. Just go and unpack your life history. I'm at the phase of my life. I have the access. I have the resources.
Yeah.
I want to talk about my life.
Yeah.
Who this young boy was before they became a man.
Yeah.
And there is where we will find the kind of gaps and the vulnerabilities that we start to unpack to say, do you perhaps think this was problematic? What is the clash between this manifestation in adulthood based off your childhood experiences?
Yeah.
So really just the suggestion to say there is a space. There are also men, if you feel comfortable speaking to another man, who would be able to guide you adequately in this way. But when it comes to choice, everyone has a choice to do things differently, especially when they see that prior actions have been harmful.
Yeah. All right. So we're not stuck to the dysfunction. We can change.
Yes.
Both as, recipient of the patriarchy and also the ones that are actually practicing the patriarchy. We can all change. We spoke about how most of the time, if people are coming for couples therapy, it is initiated by the females. It's rare. They do initiate. I do have clients who initiate, a male who initiate couples counseling, but men don't. Where do you think that is coming from?
Sure. With initiation, so the trend is typically women will initiate therapy because they are seeing that there is a particular area of the relationship that seems to be a lot more stagnant or unable to be resolved, right? There's a stronghold in a particular aspect of the partnership. Some men will initiate therapy as the desperate effort to save.
Okay.
Yeah, to say an ultimatum was given and I ran out of options.
Yeah.
So I kind of said, let's go to therapy and see if this is not something we can speak to.
Yeah.
So it almost becomes when the man is backed up,
Yeah.
against the wall, then they kind of, are quite willing to say, okay, let me concede and let's go and see if we can get the help.
Yeah.
Yet women are almost wanting to go there before it becomes this point of no return.
Yeah. So what do you think are the little lies that men have believed about therapy that makes them feel like I don't need a third person to advise me how to run my life and my household? Yeah. So what are the lies that men believe about therapy?
The assumption that it would be a space where they would be ambushed, where they would be shamed, where they would be judged, where you would have two women really saying the way in which you've been conducting yourself is dysregulated and therefore not viable to be able to sustain a relationship. The assumption is also that, there is potentially an ideal man that they should become. And therapy is a space where that is reinforced.
Okay.
And yet that's not the case. When we're thinking about therapy, we're thinking about a space that is fair, that works within the best interest of all people involved, that seeks to teach, to correct, that seeks to co-construct a new reality and a new perspective with the couple's voice being core and center. It's a space really where we can be, vulnerable and unashamed to be able to say, this is what is happening to me. This is what is happening to me. The result of your actions have become this. And what is this now spiraling into? So it's really not a place where you are there to be judged for not partnering well or not, being involved in the way you're meant to be. It's really a space for both of you to say, okay, the relationship as an entity, as something separate to both of you, has its benefits it has its limitations.
Yes.
Let us explore and use a strength-based and confidence-based approach to saying what works here and what doesn't, and
Yeah.
how will you both ensure that needs work is prioritized in
Yeah.
the relationship. Yeah.
So would you say that couples therapy is something that should be normalized in every relationship instead of going there because my back is against the wall, because we are in crisis, because we can't resolve an issue? I mean, I personally have gone to couples therapy, and I was just amazed at how much I have learned. And I'm like, why is this not prescribed as a normal thing? Because one of the things that couples therapy was able to do was to sort of like normalize the stage of the marriage. And he was able to say, this is where your marriage is, and these are the issues that you're most likely to experience. And if you don't resolve them, you can split over things that could have been resolvable. And so I go to couples therapy like I would go to a gynae, just for maintenance.
Of course.
So I think a lot of people see it as a place to go and resolve big conflicts. It's a place to go to decide, are we going to work things out or are we splitting? So
Crisis management.
yeah.
Yeah. Yet it's supposed to be, kind of relationship management.
Yeah.
If it were up to me, it would be advertised on billboards.
Yes.
It would just be on the highway, and there's one that says go to therapy.
Can we buy a billboard and do that?
Just put that, go to therapy.
Yeah.
But we have to also work with other stakeholders
Yes,
when we're saying we want to roll out awareness around supporting couples. We have to engage churches. We have to engage other, clinical stakeholders that see couples,
Yes.
so the doctors in the fertility clinics, the doctors who are doing your health check, they should be able to say there's also couples therapy that just assists in terms of supporting your relationship as it goes through the various ebbs and flows.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a female, because we are encouraging men to be vulnerable, even though they don't know what it is to be vulnerable? And one of the things that you said was that when you speak to most men, they will tell you that I don't know what I'm doing, and sometimes we as female counterparts don't necessarily like a man who says, I don't know what I'm doing. So we encourage you to be vulnerable. And then when you're vulnerable, we don't know how to hold space for that, So I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to a woman who has a man who's vulnerable and honest about their struggles? And sometimes the struggles are way deeper than you can handle, and you're not able to hold space for them, and it's starting to affect your mental health in a negative way.
For sure. Love is patient, love is kind, and love covers a multitude of imperfections.
Yeah.
But love is reciprocal. That's the important thing. Is it's not the thing that women do for men.
Yes.
If anything, the instruction was for men to love.
Yes.
There are women like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it, and for women to be able to honor, respect, and submit.
Yeah.
So it is this reciprocal dynamic. In the patience, we all have to understand in a relationship that there is work that only we can do.
Yeah.
A partner will not be able to get you to the other side unless you are willing and able. So when it comes to just thinking about this support, is that it should not be sacrificial. It should not be unto self-sacrifice. It really should be a thing of, we are here working together to build something, but we must both know, what are we working towards? And I think that the question around vision is a very big one, to say, what is this partnership supposed to achieve in our lifetime? And even what is this partnership supposed to model for the children who've become an inheritance of our union?
Yeah.
So we have to understand what we are building towards. And I think that reciprocity then becomes something that is going to be easily achieved, because we both know what the mandate is.
Yeah. When does a woman say enough is enough? Is there a time where you'd be like, I've done everything I could and I'm not able to proceed with this? you are not willing to reciprocate, you know, the love and all that. So when enough is enough.
Yeah. When there's harm.
Okay.
Yeah. And the harm is deliberate. And when we say deliberate, it's been expressed. People have tried to help intervene. You know, other people have also cautioned, and there's a deliberate effort not to kind of understand, yield, be compassionate towards what a partner's needs are. That's when you must realize, okay, there is a great shift here where what I was hoping for is something that you are admitting you cannot particularly get to.
Yeah.
So when there's harm and there's neglect and there's an abandonment, I think that is when we should be able to say, okay, we've done our best.
Yeah.
But there's a conversation that must be able to precede all of these things, these outcomes. And if in that conversation we don't achieve much, then we must be amicable as best as possible in being able to say, maybe this is not viable for us.
Yeah, so that you don't die.
Or even, you know, kind of disintegrate
Yeah.
in other aspects of your life
Yeah.
just because I'm holding on to a hope, but I'm holding on alone.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You know, like I always said, that I always have an idea of what I want spoken on the podcast, but maybe I might have left something that you feel is important for the audience. So I'm going to give you time to speak to the audience directly from your heart as to what it is that you would like for them to know. Anything in your heart.
Yeah, anything in my heart.
Yeah.
Sure. It's really just about being able to encourage that we don't condemn ourselves. As human beings. We're all figuring things out. No one is born knowing. There's a structure and a strategy that we all have to implement in our lives to be able to lead our best lives. And the idea of self-actualization is such a personal thing. So don't look to the left or to the right to say, what is the ideal self-actualized state? Understand that and pursue that for yourself in terms of what is this purpose to which I have been called, and how do I work towards achieving that?
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
You're a beautiful soul. You're a brilliant mind.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful that you could come. And I think that the people who you are seeing and serving, I can feel that they come out of that therapy room transformed if they want to. So bless you, and thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clementine.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right.
I'll be back.
Oh, please. I think we
For
still
sure.
have
Thank you.
a lot to talk about. Hey, guys, thank you so much for staying until the end. And we'll see you soon again. And until then, love your mind.